Yogis throughout the ages have gone upside down, and there's good reason. The reason that I go upside down every day usually has something to do with emptying out, especially if stress has accumulated. I'm thinking a lot. That's a really lovely way to shift the cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system, the breath changes, and it's like a reset. You see for yourself if this is true. There are many ways to go upside down. There's probably a way for all of us. This practice is dedicated to looking at ways we can thoughtfully and safely come into headstand. We'll begin at the wall if you have one. If you don't have a wall, let's come to standing at the mat. At the wall, the feet are away. They're away about 1.5 feet, almost 2 feet. Bend your knees a little bit. Place your sit bones against the wall and then folding forward. Just let the head and neck hang. Maybe grasping the elbows. Relaxing the face. I always think of this like the lower body is like a rock and the upper body is like a waterfall. Just let whatever is here pour right off. Watching the breath. Wonderful. Okay, now let's move the tailbone toward the pubic bone as we one vertebrae at a time rise up. Good. And just come to standing for a moment with your heels against the wall the best you can. Just pause and feel. So it could be as simple as that. It could be that we just dedicate a place in our office or in our home to fold forward. If we wish to make things a little bit more complex, we could come down onto hands and knees. Now I've got my mat under my hands, which is convenient. Be sure that the surface that your hands are on is not slippery. That's rather important. The balls of my feet are against the wall right now. And I'll come into downward facing dog. So just a little bit more space now between hands and feet. Good. I tend to take the shoulder blades around toward my sternum the best I can. Draw the lower ribs up and in. You could try to take all 10 toes off the ground here. See how that goes. And if you're used to this, it sounds a lot easier. Well, it is a lot easier than it is if you're new. So what we'll do is we'll take 1 foot hip height. That part's really important. Hip height. You will look at your feet the whole time. Push into the wall and the other foot will follow. Press the feet into the wall. Extend the hips up. Feel the hands press. Now, I'm going to pretend that I could look at my belly right now, which is impossible. But what that does is it draws the lower ribs in. Maybe one leg goes up. And maybe we switch. Good, and then when we make our way down 1 foot at a time, knees to the floor, let's come right into child's pose. Noticing what we feel now. Hands under the shoulders, gradually rise up. Okay, definitely wakes us up. The key to that, if you're new, is the temptation to want to not fall is huge, and it means that what will happen is people will extend their head forward. You've got to let your head drop. There's a certain level of control that one must give up in this, and I guarantee after a few tries it will work great. Okay? Moving on from here, let's come back to the mat. lying back. Good. Let's interlace the fingers behind the head so the thumbs draw down the nape of the neck. Let's interlace the fingers behind the head so the thumbs draw down the nape of the neck, with the knees in and the shins parallel with the floor. We'll gradually lift the head, keep it heavy. Draw your knees toward your elbows. We inhale, open out just a little bit. Exhale, knees and elbows, maybe they touch. Inhale, open. Without touching down, exhale, knees and elbows. Inhale. Please get used to the way this feels, because this becomes useful when we move to headstand variations. Elbows and knees touch. Inhale. Let's do 2 more. Release the head, release the arms, release the legs, release. And notice when you're lying on your back that this is what headstand would feel like. This is what all the inversions feel like. In that we really want to make one long plane here. Okay, moving on, we draw the knees into the chest. You could cross the ankles, roll forward, hands to the ground, lift the hips, send the legs back, downward facing dog. Walk your dog if you like. Drawing lower ribs in. Okay, so we've got the same, we're building the foundation for inversions. With the lower ribs in, almost like they're knitting to the top of the hips. Lift, lift, lift the pelvis up and back. And then let's come forward to plank pose. All right, can you see that this is also a headstand? It sure sets us up well. So often in plank, what we'll see is this kind of drop in the pelvis. There's too much arch in the ribs. We've got to wake up, lift the pelvis, round the upper back a little bit, press into your hands, extend from your heels through the top of your head. You see how everything is working without working too hard. Great, let's come down now, knees down, torso down, rest on a cheek. Pause and feel. Yeah, how's it feeling for you? You know, we listen inside. What's going on? It's just amazing how after a few shapes with the breath, conscious shapes with the breath, the body begins to change. It's changing all the time. The question is, how is it changing? Okay, so we come back. Now this time we'll bring the forearms to the ground so they are parallel with each other. And tuck the toes under. Same idea. Got the elbows under the shoulders. You can look right down your body. Be sure that the whole front body, you can feel how the front body is actually supporting the back body. Push back through your heels. Yep. Feel the elbows press, forearms press. A little round in the upper back. Couple more breaths here. Strong legs. And then knees down and the whole body comes to the floor. Resting on the opposite cheek. Feel what it's like. All right, let's take child's pose. Hands under the shoulders. Walk the hips back. Forehead to the mat. Hands under shoulders. Inhale, come up. So let's begin our formal discussion about headstand and the principles that are so important. It's useful to use a wall when you're learning. The temptation would be to go up the other way so that you have the wall to rest your legs on. But if you go in that direction, it will be very difficult. It's called dependence. We get dependent on the wall. It becomes difficult to learn how to come away from the wall one leg at a time. So I recommend this way. The key, well, there's many keys. The first key is interlace. What I do is I have my pinky fingers flush, which means no pinky finger is on top of the other. And then my elbows are under my shoulders, okay? That means they're not out like this because I need to have a good triangular base of support. Follow me? Then I lower down. You can see elbows out, no triangle, needs to be even. From elbow to elbow and from elbows to hands. Now I open my hands like a little cup. My thumbs are up. And then I feel the balls of my feet press against the wall. I lower the top of my head onto the floor. Now this is the catch with videos instructing headstand. Some of you need to have the front of your head on the floor, just slightly forward, and some it's the top, and that depends on your cervical vertebrae. So to save us all from the risks of damage to the cervical vertebrae, we're actually not going to place the head completely on the floor. We're going to have the head about an inch off the floor. You can see that a tiny rodent could crawl under my head. Fortunately, that won't be happening today. So when I stick my head in there, it is floating just a little bit. My hands are wrapped around the back of the head, and then my elbows press. They press so much that that lifts my shoulders, and then I come up into dolphin pose or a semblance of dolphin, and I lift the hips really high. And then if I'm feeling up to it, I take 1 foot at a time up the wall. And for a moment, I just let the head hang here, pressing into the forearms. I might take 1 leg up. I might take the other leg up. All the while, the shoulders are moving away from the ears. Then I come back down, rest in child's pose. And then slowly rise. So that actually was a prep for forearm balance, wasn't it? My head was completely free. I feel that to prepare for headstand, one should be able to be strong enough and stable enough through the shoulders before we start playing with the headstand. So this practice, you may pause at some point, realizing that the next place that I take you, it's not time. So work on that, the place where you stopped, okay? So next step would be back onto the mat. All right, so we interlace the fingers. Now, it is a fact that my head is lightly on the floor. It's my hair on the floor and not my skull. I tuck my toes under. The shoulders lift away. If the shoulders collapse down, that means my cervical vertebrae are squashed. So the shoulders must lift away. And as long as they stay lifted, we're good. The feet walk in, and one thigh comes close to the ribs. And we see if we can gently balance so that the thighs come right in. And then we come down. Child's pose again. Remember action and then pause to feel the reaction in the body. before we go on. So we rise up. That step, drawing the thighs into the ribs, and we're hanging out there like in child's pose, but sideways, is so critical, because otherwise what has to happen is that the hips have to find where they belong in relation to the shoulders. If they don't find that and we start to jump our legs up, we will not know where our equilibrium is, and we will invariably fall. Cool? Not cool. We do not want to fall. So now let's say we were able to hang out in that shape for 2 minutes. If that were the case, we'd be ready for the next step. Next step. At this point with the next step, my top of my head is on the floor because I've trained the shoulders to stay up. Remember the rule that as soon as the shoulders collapse, the game is over and we come down. We don't want that to happen. We lift up, we draw the knees in, the thighs in, we spark the elbows, which means pushing the elbows, and we extend up slowly. I prefer extending both legs at the same time because my hips know where they belong over the shoulders. You might notice if you pull through your heels, that lengthens the back body. If you pull through your toes, that lengthens the front body. If you floint, which is balls up, toes back, that's a little combination between the front and the back of the legs. To come down, we come back from whence we came. The thighs come in close. We land the feet lightly. And yes, that's right. We rest in child's pose. We notice how we feel right now. Often it changes the respiration. There's a little bit more freedom in the breath. But I don't want to tell you what it's going to be like for you. You find out for yourself. All right, so the next step, after months of practicing with the thighs coming into the rib cage, is we'll go up straight-legged. The issue with this one is the SI joints and knowing where the hips are over the shoulders. So for some, this can be hard on the lower back. You want to listen in quite attentively. And the move we made in the beginning, lying on the back, is so helpful for this because it's the front engagement that's going to help to unfurl the legs upward. All right, shall we? Interlace, check the elbows. Good strong triangle. Open the cup of the hands. Slide head in. Top of the head is on the floor, but it's light. Shoulders lift up. Tuck toes under. Walk the hips over the shoulders. Notice, can you bring the feet off the floor and float the feet? And then front of the body activated. We lift up, and then I check my shoulders again. Remember the key with the feet. And then once we've built a headstand practice, some traditions don't spend much time in headstand, while other traditions could spend a long, long time in headstand. As we build our practice, the head will be able to take more weight. The arms will get lighter. But this is a slow-going situation over many years of practice. To come down, the sit bones stay high, and we gradually kind of jackknife our way down. Beginning again in child's pose. Hands slide under shoulders, gradually come up. Let's lie back to be fair to the practice. Coming to Shavasana, releasing. sometimes it is the case that we begin to see the world through a very strong set of opinions and judgments and beliefs. When we allow ourselves to go upside down, it's an analogy for relaxing our view, becoming a little less attached to the way we believe we're seeing a situation or a person, and opening ourselves to seeing from a different perspective. We call this, from a photographer's standpoint, widening our aperture. When you're ready, drawing the knees in, giving ourselves a hug, rolling to one side. And we practice so that we can be more conscious human beings, right? So that our thoughts and our words and our actions, they benefit other people instead of making things difficult. And we slowly come up. Now we're right side up. Let's just pause and feel what it's like. Good. Let's do gently left hand outside of the right head. And maybe the right fingertips to the floor. Good. And then slowly come back. Right hand, while the left fingertips move away. And then slowly rise. Bring the palms together at the heart. One Om we'll close with. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Om. And bring the hands to the forehead, right thought. May we be steady and present and joyful. The hands come to the mouth, right speech. May our words improve upon the silence. Our hands come to our heart, right action. May we be the change that we wish to see. Namaste.